Today we're going to talk about Snow White. Well, actually, we're going to talk about classifiers, but we're going to use Snow White to do it. Um, I'm not going to tell you the whole story here because it's long and complicated and you probably don't care, but I was trying to think, how do I help my students practice? What do I do that's going to help them walk away from the English words and think in pictures? And then it occurred to me, Snow White is the answer. So, a little history. Snow White was made in 1937 by the Walt Disney Company. It was the world's first ever full-length animated film. And keep in mind, in 1937, talking with a movie was still a fairly new concept. So audiences weren't used to lots of dialogue and lots of words and lots of talking. So there's big parts of Snow White, especially at the end, where there isn't a lot of dialogue and it's all very visual, because if you had silent movies, that's what audiences were used to. So Walt Disney kind of incorporated that into his film because that's what they were used to seeing. So let's talk a little bit about how Walt Disney made a cartoon. And that might not seem relevant, but we'll see how it ties in here in a little bit. So when an animation is created, they start with the background. This is often static, meaning it doesn't change. So for Snow White, at least the parts that we're going to talk about might just be the forest, right? So the animators would make certain backdrops for different scenes in the movie. This is the forest. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So all of that is static. It doesn't change, just kind of set up, and then all the action happens on top of it. Next, they create their characters, right? They would decide, someone decides, what does Snow White look like? What does her dress look like? What's the shape of her face and all of those kind of things. So that would be the next thing to do. Who are your characters? Who's involved in the story? Then, now that you have your backdrop, your story needs to take place. You have Snow White. Where does she go? What does she do? She walks down the stairs. She stretches her arms, right? She sweeps the floor. And then you need to actually give it action. When Snow White takes the broom and she brushes it, each cell, each part of that film was created separately. They were hand drawn by an army of people working at this. So somebody would show Snow White holding the broom this way, and he would draw that cell. And then he would move the broom ever so slightly and draw the exact same thing again. And then he'd move the broom just a little more, and then just a little more, and then you get all of those animations together, and it looks like she is sweeping the floor. And that's how the action took place. Well, in a lot of ways, classifiers work the same way. So we start with our background. You set up where you are. Directing a play works the same way. First, you have to build your set and decide where does your action take place? What does that look like? Where is the environment that you're talking about? General to specific would relate to that as well, right? We need to know where we are and get this visual image before we can know what's going on. And then who's there? You cast your characters, right? Who's involved in this story? And then you give it action, right? You decide what's going to happen and you give it action. And classifiers work a lot the same way. So I like to call this structure lights, camera, action, right? Because you set the scene, you pick your characters, you cast your roles, and then you let them act out what's happening. So for instance, if you take this scene of the end of the film, Snow White has fallen for the evil queen's poisoned apple, and everyone thinks she's dead, but she's so beautiful. The dwarves, who have become her friend, can't take it in their hearts to bury her, so they make her this beautiful casket of glass and gold. And you think, what does that casket look like? So first you start by identifying that it's a casket, or actually a death box is how you would sign that. And then you describe the shape of it, right? So you'd classify the shape. And then you might say it's gold. And then the top is glass, and it's got this shape to it, right? All of that would be classifiers when you describe what it looks like. And then you can put Snow White in the casket. So you can set the scene and say the casket is here, and then you can put Snow White in it and say she's laying on top of it.
So every day the dwarves come and they kneel down in front of the casket and they take their hats off and they put them over their chest. So again, all of that is classifiers. The kneeling down, the hats over their hearts, but you have to identify it's the seven men before they can kneel. And you have to say it's a hat before you can take it off and put it over their heart.
All of the little woodland animals come to visit Snow White as well, and they bow their heads. So again, so you could say woodland animals. And there is a sign for forest, but you can also kind of just explain what kind of animals they are. So there's deers, there's raccoons, there's squirrels and rabbits, right? Those are the woodland creatures that come visit her, and they bow their heads. So you can think about use an S hand shape like this to bow their heads, and there's more than one of them, so I'd use both hands. And then I would also bow to make it clear that what action they're doing. So again, that's part of that facial expression that goes with that classifier. And then I could say they were sad. All right, I hope this is a good, just gives you another perspective on how to think about it. Our homework today is going to be practiced with a different part of the same film, but I hope that helps you to think about classifiers in a new way. Happy signing.